tunnels that are too small to get traffic through. So anyhow, that might be something and maybe you've already done that work or that research, but we do know there's some opportunity and maybe additional push or leverage that we can use if there is that question of getting someone to hospital or getting ambulances or fire engines to certain parts of the community. That's part of, I think, an important part of the presentation that we need to make as well, and why this is important. So if that does apply, which it sounds like it might, especially if trains are blocking crossings, to have that alternative route, that's something I think that could be very compelling part of a presentation, hopefully, that we'll be making over the next months.
Congressman, you bring up an excellent point with regard to at-grade crossings in Illinois. And out of all the suburbs that this rail runs through, Plainfield has the most crossings by far. We have 17 at-grade crossings in our community, and when a substantially long train blocks several of those crossings, it poses a tremendous danger.
Congressman, I want to add one other value that this project that Alan just discussed would mention to our businesses is that right now to have a semi-truck go to 143rd and it's all the way down to Route 30 to access 55 South. Having this project move forward, you're going to see our companies, businesses along 143rd pay less for the overhead expenses to have shipping in and out. They're going to have direct access right to the highway. It's approximately an extra, I'd say, 10 to 15 minutes. Yeah, at least to access the highway, in addition to decreasing traffic. So that is another added benefit. It will actually lower the operation cost for our businesses.
Which is really good point, sir. Is also, it dissects our town such as our fire stations. We do have fire stations on both sides, so that's all right. But if there was a police emergency, it might affect them because our police is on the western portion, so anything eastern and southern could be affected in their response time. So this is one of our main concerns also.
If I may, I'd like to add one thought while we're discussing transportation. Several years ago, largely due to the efforts of State Representative Tom Cross, we began discussions about a star line, a commuter rail to and from Chicago. I can't stress enough that not only do we need public transportation to and from Chicago, but interconnections with the suburbs out here. As this community in this region builds out, having rail for public transportation is an immense challenge, but an immense need as well.
Yeah, Trustee Fay is correct. Actually, we host the baselines here, which are the bus routes that go to the city of Chicago. We have two different routes that actually start off here in Plainfield, and then they go to various other communities on their way. Their biggest challenge actually has been the rail lines. The challenges for them in Plainfield is they just don't know when the trains are going to be in their way. And that definitely impacts their commute time and their responsibility to their riders. So they too would be very much impacted and interested in coming up with a long-term solution. We've been working with them to try to find some alternative locations, but they can still start and end here in Plainfield. We have a very large need within our community for their services, and they love the amount of ridership that they're getting, but the trains do prove to be problematic for them as well. So that might be as well something as well for us to include in that conversation.
We have had meetings with CN, and they've been quite receptive, but we're talking about the Hot Wheel issue. And what it is after it goes by detector, the train has to stop and then it has to be inspected. Well, they don't just inspect the Hot Wheel, they inspect the whole train at that time. And this is where we run into problems. And with that said, the train has stopped blocking these crossings, and they've run into the issue where the engineer runs out of time, so now it has to sit there for a time waiting for a new crew to come. And sometimes this could be hours. And just like the rest of the people on the board have said, sometimes this is more than an hour, which, as they said, 126, Route 30, Route 59 are blocked. So it's really an issue around the town.
I do want to take a chance as well and recognize Nick Palmer with the county. Nick's in the audience, and I know he had a few other items to talk about.
Good morning, Congressman, Mayor, trustees. We have actually several staff here who are going to make presentations. I'm going to let them go first, and then I'm going to say a few words too. But first up is Bruce Gould, who's our county engineer, director of the Division of Transportation. He's going to come up and talk about transportation. Bruce.
Morning, Congressman. I want to thank you, your staff, for inviting me, and the village of Plainfield for inviting me here this morning to make a brief presentation. I could just give a little history lesson on our Build Will program. I don't know, I'm sure people in the village have heard about this. I don't know if you and your staff have heard about it. In 2008, the county unveiled the Build Will program. It consisted of 60 projects throughout the county. And it was primarily to be paid for by the quarter-cent RTA tax that was enacted about that same time. Unfortunately, soon after we unveiled the Build Will program, the economy took a dive. We unveiled the program in October, and about a month later, the economy really started to take a dive. Because of that, the county decided we need to do something in Will County to jumpstart the economy as the federal government did with the stimulus program. We kind of called Build Will our Will County stimulus program. And by doing, we bonded $100 million to try to jumpstart the economy in the county and put forward a lot of projects to put people to work, contractors, so on and so forth. And in that time, another 23 projects were added to Build Will for a total cost of approximately $383 million. Now, in that time, since we started the program, which was about 2008, 2009, we have put out approximately $125 million worth of work. We have a lot of work in the program left, and that work is being primarily paid for by the RTA tax, county MFT, local funding, and federal grants that we receive. A couple of projects that I'd just like to briefly talk about. One that is within your district, sir, is the 95th Street at Plainfield Naperville intersection. The 95th Street extension is a project that we've been working on for approximately 10 years. It was a new river crossing across the DuPage River. It linked the village of Bolingbrook to Naperville, and it terminated just to the west of the intersection of Naperville Road. We have completed the corridor up to the intersection. We are hoping to complete the intersection this year, pending right-of-way. We've got a few right-of-way parcels that we have to acquire. It's a $7 million project. It'll add to this corridor for traffic congestion. It's traffic signal upgrade, and there's a new structure that's going to be reconstructed west of the intersection. So that's one project that I'd like to, that's within our Build Will program. Another project, a major project that is not within your district, but it is a major project, and it affects regionally this entire area, is the I-55 at Weber Road interchange. We partnered with the state of Illinois for this interchange project. It is part of our Build Will project. $100 million project. It extends from 119th Street south to 135th Street. 2-mile project. It is add lanes, a 6-lane corridor. It's going to be a completely new interchange, a DDI, if you've heard that term. Diverging diamond will be the second one in the state of Illinois. The first one is the one at Ogden and 88, which is under construction right now. This will be the second one. The state received design approval for this project January 31st of last year. We are moving forward with design right now for this project. Total cost, $100 million. We are waiting for the call for Tiger funds. I talked to one of your staff members today. There still has not been a call yet. As soon as the call for Tiger grant comes forward, we are going to make application for it. I think it's a regional project. It's significant for this area to move traffic. A lot of crashes have occurred in that area because of the congestion. That's our highest traveled county highway, and of course, I don't need to tell anybody about the traffic that we have on I-55 in this area. So we're looking forward to moving this project forward. Hopefully, we can get Tiger grant funding for this, and your support would be greatly appreciated. One other project that I would just briefly like to talk about that is not within this area, but regionally it is a big issue in Will County, is the Ileana Expressway. I'm sure you've heard a lot of talk about that. It links I-65 in Lowell, Indiana to I-55 in Will County. It crosses the entire stretch in Will County, the 47-mile corridor. It cuts completely through Will County, the part that's in the state of Illinois. With the intermodals that we have down in Joliet and Elwood, we've got the biggest inland port in the country. And I don't know if there's an inland port, maybe John, you could say there's one in the world any bigger. You know, there are in the coast, but it's huge, the amount of truck traffic down there. This corridor is greatly needed along this part of the county. We relieve congestion on multiple interstates, 65, 57, 80, 55, state highways, local highways in this region. It's greatly needed for Will County. Any support that you could give for this would be appreciated by the county. With that, that's all I have to say. If there's any questions for anybody?
I can tell you that while those two projects that you mentioned aren't within your boundaries or within our corporate limits, we do see those as strategic improvements needed for the area. A lot of our residents actually travel over to the Weber Road interchange. It is very much a much-needed improvement to the area, especially while we still are just in the phase 1 studies for Airport, Lockport Road, and for 126. So it very much is very much needed. We also see the Ileana as truck traffic on 55 and on 80 are very much a challenge. This will provide a great relief along those corridors, and also then it provides for great opportunity for further growth for business within all of Will County, and the rising tide always lifts all ships. So we're very much in support of both those projects.
If I could just make one other comment in regards to the intermodal traffic. I don't know if you heard, but the 28th of this month, next Wednesday, it's Walter Strawn Drive, which was one of the major roads into the port, will be closed. Administrative law judge at the ICC ruled that this should be closed for traffic reasons, for possibility of crashes along there. They are closing that. That is one of the major access points with that. With that closure, that is just going to add that much more traffic on I-80 and I-55. So without this Ileana road, it's really going to exacerbate the situation down in that part of the county. Thank you.
We also have Pat Farah, who's our Workforce Investment Board Director, coming up. We thank you, Congressman. I know you've been out before, met with Pat and some of our board members with Pat.
Thank you, Congressman and Mayor and trustees, village manager. I appreciate you giving me a few minutes to talk. And I know some of the staff, so it's been a pleasure to work with your staff. They're great, and we thank you for your vote on the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, which is our new legislation. John Grueling mentioned the importance of workforce to the employers. We know that so many new employers are coming to Will County, and it's my role to make sure that we have people who are prepared for those jobs. And even more critical, with our unemployment rate dropping, employers are going to have a more and more difficult time finding workers. So we're really looking to the new legislation to help us develop programs that meet those needs for our current employers. As the Department of Labor issues regulations around the legislation, we have some issues that we definitely want to make sure we express, and I've talked to Doug about those a little bit and have some comments that we can talk further about. Regulations have been pushed off for a few months, so while we're implementing July 1, we hope to get regulations maybe in March or April, but we're moving forward. We think it's too important to wait, and we'll see how our plans work out with that. The focus on employers and work-based learning has been critical, and especially under the new legislation, we think that it's important we work more closely with employers to make sure that the opportunities that they have to hire people, we can assist with through those federal dollars. In Will County, we get about $6.5 million in workforce funds every year and serve almost 6,000 residents through our workforce program. So we want to make sure we can continue to increase those numbers and meet the needs of our employers. Our unemployment rate dropped from 8.2% in November of 13 to 5.5% in November of 14. We saw an increase of 8,000 jobs in Will County in the last year. So that means that we have a smaller pool of people competing for a larger number of jobs, and we need to work even harder to make sure that we make that connection. So this new legislation and the regulations that come out of it are going to be really important. And as we work with other state agencies, and that's one of our challenges, is with the new administration in the state, some of the state agency opportunities that we might have had, or relationships that we might have had in the past, we're going to recreate. So we're looking forward to developing relationships both at the state level and with your staff and your office and you and other congressional leaders. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, and appreciate your vote on the workforce investment.
I'm going to try to touch on a few issues and try not to go too far into the weeds, but I'm here on behalf of County Executive Larry Walsh. He unfortunately couldn't be here. He sends his regrets, Congressman. I know you were colleagues in General Assembly. He's enjoyed working with you in your new role as Congressman. Like I said already, we appreciate you coming out previously and working closely. I'm going to touch on three things. One is one successful effort we had last year that may lead to some other work in the coming year, some ongoing issues that your staff may be interested in, and then some other projects that my colleagues have already touched on. I also have some handouts for your staff. I'm going to send around for the folks in the audience. As we all know, Will County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country, let alone in the state. We're expected to be the second largest county in the state, eventually behind Cook. And anyone in Village of Plainfield, Plainfield Township, Wheaton Township, your district, knows how rapid the growth has been, which challenges our infrastructure, which has already been touched on, challenges our services. But we're expected to be 1.2 million by 2030, 2035-ish. We're served, Will County as a whole is served by 6 congressional members, which we're glad to have. We have a caucus, we already have the Illinois delegation, 6 of the 18. We hope the Will County delegation will meet soon. And our 2 senators, we've enjoyed a good relationship with all of those folks, and we appreciate it. The one issue I wanted to just touch on as far as a federal issue that we dealt with last year successfully was our Birdview landfill. It was originally the former Joliet Arsenal ammunition plant in 1996. It was decommissioned, and as part of the agreement on it, there was economic development opportunities there, which have resulted in our intermodal facilities. There's the Abraham Lincoln Cemetery, and there's also the county landfill, which we went through the process. I'm not going to go into that, but we selected Waste Management as the operator for that. They've been operating successfully since 2004. Unfortunately, during that time, there was a restriction placed, and it was probably one of the only restrictions in the country on a federally cited process that restricted it only to Will County waste and put a time limit on that. And through our success in working with places like the Village of Plainfield, the townships, we've increased our recycling significantly, which resulted in extending the life of that landfill. And we projected that would, the lifetime we had would be surpassed just because we had reduced the amount of materials going electronic and other things. So we were successful working with your office and your colleague, Congressman Kinzinger, Senator Kirk, Senator Durbin, to get an additional 15 years extended. We appreciate that. That was a huge success for us. We believe that will probably be enough time to fill it up at its current site. And the nuance of that, again, I'm not trying to get too far into the weeds, is this is adjacent to the Medeawin Tallgrass Prairie, which there's sensitivities. Medeawin has a plan for a long term. We work very closely with their supervisor there, and I think that's why we were able to get this done, working with all the partners. We may be back to you, this is kind of just a heads up, to look at the restriction on the county restriction. We can accept from municipalities that are in part in Will County, so Plainfield, which just straddles the border, we can accept. Naperville has just become a client of Waste Management. But there's opportunities to the west of us here in other counties that they could access the site, which keeps costs down for our residents, and that's a real benefit to us. So, and I mentioned Medeawin, as part of the agreement of the original deed, we accept any remediated waste from the old ammunition plant. There hasn't been a lot of funding for that, so that's kind of delayed their progress on their long-term plan. We're hoping that working with the private sector and the federal government locally, we can get some more of that remediation done, which helps Medeawin. Also is part of the agreement to get that waste in the landfill. We may come and talk to you about that. So that's a real big success, and we appreciate all the help at the federal level. On the local level, I just want to touch on, because I know your office has been a leader in this, is the heroin efforts. I'm going to pass one other document around, sorry. We're having an event that we've had the last couple of years related to heroin prevention. And the Will County, like our Collier County colleagues, have taken different approaches, but some collaborative. We took a more education role initially, whereas State and Page went more on the Narcan, the antidote, kind of bringing people back. Now we've kind of flipped roles. They're getting more involved in the education. We're doing the Narcan, but basically there's two major efforts in Will County. The education, which I sent around, we have a forum April 10th. We welcome your staff and anybody in the public here to attend. That's 8 a.m. to noon. It's just to save the day at this point, but that's over at the Romeo Athletic Center. This brings together social service providers, substance abuse groups, people who've been a victim of this, or families are supporting recovering heroin users. We've been successful, we think, in part because of these efforts. In 2012, we had 53 heroin-related deaths. In 2013, that dropped to 38, which was a 35% decrease. And in 2014, it dropped to 34. So still too many, but we're on the education side. We're working currently in the Valley View schools in the junior high to try to educate young people about the dangers and their families, because I know I heard when this first started happening in 2011, parents didn't know how to handle it because it's such an aggressive substance abuse, and they didn't know how to handle it. So we're trying to attack it from the education side, but Will County has also launched an Narcan program this year. We've begun with Village of Bolingbrook. We're soon to be rolling it out with the Will County Sheriff's Department and other police departments that are interested in taking that program on. There are some concerns about does this encourage use, but one of the great quotes I heard was, death is not a rehabilitation option. If you can bring somebody back from the brink, get them into a program, and hopefully get them back on track. So we're very excited about that. And why your staff may be interested is both those efforts are being funded by Justice Assistance Grants from the BURN through the DOJ. We get a grant every year with the City of Joliet, and we've chose to spend our funds the last 2 years in those programs. And we're using those as kind of pilot programs that hopefully can be replicated in other areas of the state, county, country, what have you. So last, two things I want to touch on. Other thing we have in our federal agenda, each year we come out and see you, Congressman, and you've seen these before, but we create a federal agenda book. We're working on publishing our book for this year, but we have an agenda ready to go. We'll be out to talk to you a range of issues, including some that I've touched on. But two things I think just worthy for your staff to understand we're working on is Will County's growing. We're trying to build a new courthouse. We're also looking at cost cutting across the county. The court system, the law enforcement is a very costly part of our budget. We have an ongoing integrated justice committee, which is bringing all the stakeholders together, trying to look at ways we can more efficiently trade information, helps with everything from Homeland Security to just the local processing warrants and things like that. We've engaged the Will County Chiefs of Police, so they're involved in this effort too, but we're hoping to make progress on that as we move towards the courthouse. The other thing, which has already been touched on a little bit, but on the economic development side, one of your staff was involved yesterday. We have this regional collaborative effort between the 7 Collar counties, including Cook and the city of Chicago. It's a very exciting effort because sometimes there's the Cook and the Collars and the city of Chicago battling. This is a very collaborative effort. I think even Tony Preckwinkle, President of Cook County, was moved, I think, a little bit yesterday when she said things sometimes turn out better than you expect. It really is a successful collaborative effort. We're looking at truck permitting, how can we make that more efficient and really deal with the routing of trucks, because I know here in Plainfield and especially around the intermodals, that's a huge issue. We've had a lot of federal assistance on that, but there's still probably more needed as far as infrastructure. One of the projects you'll hear more when we come to visit you is the Hultgren Bridge concept, which is directly out of the UP facility, directly to I-80. By building that bridge, it will get lots of trucks off Route 53, which I know is not your district. I believe that's mostly Congressman Foster's. But that's important for the whole region, and that kind of is connected to this Collar County, Chicago example. Is we're looking at the region as a whole. We know there's competition among counties and municipalities, but if we're not competitive as a region, we're going to lose out to places like Kansas City or Memphis or other parts of the country. We want to be competitive here in Illinois and restore that competitiveness. And the Hultgren Bridge is one of those. And the positive thing about that is thus far, there's been talk, and not a lot in the public, but this is potentially a privately funded or a public-private partnership. So we're hoping that can move along, and we're going to talk to you. But we've talked to U.S. Department of Transportation. They were excited because of the regional significance of that. So we've got a lot of other issues, but I'm not going to go any further. I appreciate the time, appreciate all your staff's participation, and we're glad to help at any time. So if there's any questions for any of our staff, we're glad to take those now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Palmer, while you're there, can I ask a question? You mentioned the landfill out at the former armory. What does the county have in place, or what is being planned for household hazardous waste? It's a real challenge for our residents to deposit certain things. And I know there are events held periodically and randomly, but is there a plan at the county level to receive household hazardous waste?
The simple answer, I guess, and I skimmed over some of that, I guess, is we continue to do those events. They are kind of periodic, not all the time. There used to be an IEPA grant that funded some of those, and Naperville used to have one. Ours was more, we moved them around from year to year, so people have. We are looking at, can we expand those at all? So that we have a lot of information. willcountygreen.com is a website that has a lot of information. But the other issue related to that, I guess, is not exactly the same thing as electronic recycling, which I skimmed over. Is I know here in Plainfield, Vintage Tech, which I forget the name of the company. Kuzikowski. There are some issues there that we're addressing, hopefully this spring at the General Assembly level on regulations on that, because it's becoming financially not possible to continue that work, or it's starting to shrink. But household hazardous waste, we're definitely looking at ways we can help with that. I'll just add one other piece about the landfill. One of the positives of that is not only did we get this site, get it developed, we've, through some federal stimulus money, we took $3 million, put part of that into retrofits to the county building, part of that into a gas energy plant that's on that landfill, which is creating revenue from that methane gas and the electricity it's generating, and we're returning that to make other efficiencies at county buildings. And that's one pot of money we could possibly look at funding some additional household hazardous waste collections. But it is a real issue. We're trying to keep as much of that out of the landfills or other places where people shouldn't dump those. So we should talk more about that. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out today. Are there any other trustee comments?
I would like to make one comment. Congressman, obviously, regionally, everything's important. I don't want to do your job because everyone's here with many of the same issues. But I will tell you, Plainfield does not enjoy some of the benefits that our surrounding communities do for the access to the highways. Without these roads, to be able to bypass, to be able to move industrial product across, we can't bring the industry in. We're in a catch-22 situation. We need the industry to give tax relief to our residents, to give safety to us. We're the 4th largest school district in the state, and I can, speak to that from my own personal experience from working for the schools, that when we're tied up with traffic, when there's no bypasses, when there's trucks everywhere, it's a safety issue, it's a timing issue, and it's a financial issue. And so we truly do need